Oh, there
Oh,
you are. Yeah, we're in business. Let's do it this way. This is going to be great. All
I'm
right.
just now on my phone because I don't know if I can make this work on my computer.
Me
Is that
too.
fine?
I'm
Okay,
trying
perfect.
to.
Okay.
Okay, this is great. So let's begin. Yeah, thank you, Bella. Yeah, we got it working. Okay, we're gonna like
Sweating back
figure out
here.
the YouTube stuff later. Okay, so everyone, we're here now. We're on these instas. All
Yes.
right. So I'm gonna just do the disclaimers quickly again. Uh, we're
Really?
for like the fifth time or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Uh, well, maybe I'll do an introduction first. That'll be different. So this
Okay.
is Caroline Boquist. She is the co-owner of Walrus Home in Vancouver, and she is also one of my dearest friends, one of my wisest friends, and someone that I go to regularly for advice. We talk quite a bit. Um, both of us are just people, so we're going to give you our opinions on things. We're going to give just our take from our experience. So just know that we're not professionals. And to take whatever advice resonates with you and whatever doesn't resonate with you, throw it out. We are not experts by any means. So there's that. And I think both of us really do support and believe in getting professional help as well if you feel like you need it. And so we do have resources on our website, youandipodcast.com, just in case you wanted a little bit of help finding some resources for professional help. So today is our 1 year anniversary episode, which is why we decided to do a live, because I've always wanted to raise your crane and like have people ask questions like real time. But we will be answering some questions, some of the questions that we got for the podcast, but just did not have enough episodes to answer them all. So I've chosen a few of them that I think would be interesting for us to discuss. And if you do have any questions, please do put them in the comments in the bottom, and I'll try every once in a while to scroll through them, and then we can try to answer as many of them as we can. We'll try to be about an hour, and if I see a ton more questions, maybe we'll go to an hour and a half, but I'll be posting the entire video online as a podcast episode. So don't feel, you know, like you need to tune in for all of it. I'll post everything afterwards, so you can definitely watch it afterwards. Okay, so that is all that stuff. Okay, so do you want to get into question number one? I know you're a bit nervous too, so I just want you to know, like, I am here for you.
Amazing. Thank you. We got each other.
We
We
got
got each other.
each other. Okay, so question number one is a good one. Okay, I'll read it out.
Okay.
I'm married with kids. I love my husband and my kids, but at the same time, I'm not fulfilled by my relationship. I've started developing strong feelings for someone else. It hasn't gone beyond a meeting for coffee and messaging. I don't know what to do. Please help. So that is the first question. I am so curious what your thoughts are on this.
Okay.
And if you don't feel comfortable starting, I can definitely start too.
Okay. Well, jump in obviously at any point. My immediate feeling around this is that I think it's very common and it's human nature. If you're in a relationship for a long time, life becomes this everyday mundane thing at times for people, whether it's marriage, your kids, your routine, all that kind of thing, and it can lead to feelings of feeling unfulfilled and wanting something a little bit more um, exciting, maybe. And it sounds a little bit like that's perhaps what's happening here. But I would say that it's easy to project whatever it is that we're feeling onto our partners, onto the people that are right in our immediate fold. And I peel it back just a little bit and go, actually, where is it that you're feeling unfulfilled within yourself? I kind of like to start with myself first and go, maybe it's not necessarily my partner, and maybe what is happening inside of me that's causing me to feel unfulfilled, and then really to check in, and maybe it's not necessarily the relationship, but it starts from us. That's kind of would be my first go-to.
Yeah. And how, I mean, I feel like the audience would want to know how many years you've been with your husband, because I think that's some street cred too.
Fair enough. So Devin and I have been together for 30 years. We started dating when I was 19, and we've been married for 20, going on 26 years this year. So for sure, we have been through, in that 30-year span, we've just been through so much together. And, obviously, it's not all roses all the time.
Mhm.
We have gone through our bouts of, counseling and therapy separately together, all that kind of thing. And, but part of that desire, oh, sorry.
Okay, don't
to
worry.
to stay together is that I do want to be in a loveful, fulfilling relationship with myself and with my partner. It is really important to me. Like, I am not somebody who can really stay in a place of complacency
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Hold
for a
on.
long
Your sound just got a bit muffled.
time. Okay,
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
that
that's
better?
yeah.
Um,
You don't want to stay in a place of complacency.
complacency, or um, for a long time of just coasting. I think that I am somebody who is not good in being in a place of just like coasting and comfort. I really seek to be challenged, to go deeper, to have a more fulfilled life for me and myself, so I can show up for my partner and for my kids. Um,
I do.
and so,
No.
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, you were saying that you definitely don't shy away from finding help, like finding therapy for as a couple, individually. And I do think that that's my go-to. Like I haven't been with Joe for 30 years, but we've had two rounds of our relationship, because we had our first round, we like to call that like 1.0, and this is 2.0. Um, and so we've known each other for like, I'd say 10 years now, 11
Mhm.
years. And for sure, like we go through phases where we're just on the brink of like, okay, is this the thing that's going to break us? And my first instinct is always get therapy.
Yeah.
But I was also, funny enough, listening to the Modern Love podcast,
Hmm.
which was exactly about cheating. And what Esther Perel said is that cheating, yes, there's always that conversation around like fidelity and hurt feelings and betrayal and all of that. But beneath all of it is always a sense of longing
Yes.
and loss. And so the question would be, okay, she says, I'm not feeling fulfilled by my relationship. And so there is a loss there of like, well, at one point, were you fulfilled? And how
Yeah.
do you feel about losing that connection? Because we don't get married thinking, oh, well, one day we're just going to like lose it all. Like we get married because we're so in love with this person and we want to ideally spend the rest of our lives with them.
Yeah.
And how does that feel? Lose that feeling? Because
Yeah.
it's like actually quite painful to do something like that, like connection with your person. So
And
that
I
would be
think
kind of my
it's
back. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I think that that is what happens is it can be kind of destabilizing, right? Like it's sort of like a heartbreak process. But again, I kind of really encourage myself to come back to me and within that feeling of unfulfillment, or that's just part of life, right? Like life is never this one straight line. So of course I think it's totally natural to have these feelings of ebbs and flows within ourselves, within our relationships. um, but in this meeting, what your questionnaire asked was, they're seeking this outside. They've gone on a conversation, a coffee date with this person. I'd really come back and go, is it really worth risking everything to continue that? And um, yeah, I'm just not sure. I think that it's easy to get, really caught up and lost in these romantic notions when things feel either sedentary or no longer fulfilled in a relationship. But again, it's just come back to what's going on. I really revert back to what's going on for me. Where am I really feeling that unfulfillment? What's going on in my life? And then I think it's a reflection of maybe what's going on in my relationship.
Yeah, and like, how do we define fulfillment? Because I think everyone defines fulfillment differently in a relationship. I'm just going to repeat the question for
Yeah.
people who might be in now too. The gist of it is that there is someone, I'm assuming it's a woman actually, but
Yeah.
it might be a man, someone who has husband and kids, but they don't feel fulfilled in their relationship, and they've started developing strong feelings for someone else, and it hasn't gone beyond a meeting for coffee and messaging them, but they don't know what to do, and they've asked for help. But yeah, I mean, just, what does a fulfilling relationship actually look like to us individually? Because that looks different for every single person. And if we can't even define that, then how can we make the steps to get that for ourselves too? Because we are responsible in some ways for our own desires. And I also don't want to shame the person
No.
if they feel like my relationship isn't
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
for whatever reason, and they really feel like they need to leave. Like,
Yeah.
that's okay too. Like,
Yeah.
you have your reasons, you live your life. You don't
Yeah.
owe it to anyone else other than the people directly involved for any
Yeah.
explanation
Exactly.
or justification. I left my first husband um, for, I mean, you could put it under the category of I wasn't fulfilled. I had my own reasons, but sometimes relationships, I believe, are meant to be there for a lifetime, and some are meant to last until that period of learning is done,
Yeah.
whatever that means. Because we are, I believe, um, more than just human beings in relationships. We're souls trying to learn how to reflect something more beautiful than just humanity.
Yeah.
Like, or human beings, we're here to reflect the most beautiful part of humanity, but maybe
Yeah.
not just to be human beings,
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was, yeah, I
And
don't know.
we're ever evolving people too, right? We're ever evolving people. So sometimes the people that we fall in love with, even whether it's in partnership, in marriage, or in friendships, it's sometimes, like you say, they sort of run their course, and that's okay. We have to be able to give ourselves permission to exit, if that's what's best for us.
Yeah. And I think, like, as sort of like a final thing, it's like, if we do decide, or if they do decide, like, okay, I am going to leave, I think the only thing that, if I could give any advice about, because it's so sticky and so hard to leave, both for the person that's leaving and the person that's left,
Yeah.
that if possible, and this is like an ideal situation because we're all just figuring it out, right? But to be as respectful as possible in the process of
Yeah.
leaving,
Yeah.
because what it will do, not necessarily for the person that's being left, but even for the person that's leaving, is that you won't have to deal with that level of guilt and torment after that. When you think back in time, you're like, oh, I should have handled it like this, or I should have not said that. And I only say this not to say like, here's your benchmark of what you should do, but more like compassion, like, I don't want you to hurt more than you already
Yeah.
do. And
Yes. Yes. Like, is this risk of the date kind of going to add more to the hurt,
mhm,
right? Is
yeah,
that going down a space that you can't get back from anymore? I mean, you can always get back, but it'll just add to the complexity of what's happening, right? And until we create that space within ourselves, it's even really hard to ask for what we need, unless we really kind of go inward. How are we able to ask our partners what we need if we just don't know, if
yeah,
we've lost sight of it, right?
yeah. And also on top of that, it's like, sure, we're giving all our advice, but ultimately life is about making mistakes and hurting.
Yeah.
And I say mistakes with a huge caveat, because our mistakes, even mistakes, because they're just experiences in life. And so sometimes we need to learn a lesson that is just painful, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And society may judge, but it's really hard to judge when we don't see every single piece of the puzzle. It's like, how do you know what this puzzle, this image looks like if you are missing like 95% of the pieces? You're
Yeah.
going to make a pretty shoddy guess at what that picture
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to remind people that, yes, this is our anniversary episode, and we are answering some of the questions that we didn't get a chance to answer on the podcast. But also, we're taking questions from you who have joined us. So please feel free, if you do have a question that you want us to explore, put that in the comments. And yeah, how do you feel? Do you want to move on to question 2? Do you feel
Sure.
like we explored that?
I
Have any
think
last?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one is so great. I love this question. Okay. So this person asks, how do you find balance between quote, life is too short, and yet still achieve goals and get through your daily routine? So for a bit of background, they write, I was born and raised in a war-torn country, and so daily survival was a key until my parents moved us to Canada, and we started realizing we need to have dreams, savings, and long-term goals, and not live day to day. So they started on that path until 2020. During COVID, I'll just read it. During COVID, and while I was working from home, and my 14-year-old was attending online classes, he suffered a cardiac arrest, and I was the one to perform CPR on him until the paramedics arrived and were able to revive 50 minutes later and 5 shocks of AEDs later. Oh my God, that's just
Yeah.
heartbreaking. Then 5 months later, my dad passed away of a cardiac arrest because my mom didn't know how to assist him with CPR. So all those dreams and goals I was trying to build became unimportant. I was very healthy and fit, always found balance and set boundaries for myself. And although I still try, the attitude now is, what's another glass of wine? What's another croissant? I'll go to the gym tomorrow. What's another $50 to spend on a shirt or buying more makeup? I say to myself. I deprived myself from so much over the years, and life is too short to do that again. Look, I almost lost my son in a split second. What do I need that savings for? I need to enjoy life now. I'm not going to be able to take any of it to my grave. As a family, we all know how fortunate we are to have my younger son around and how lucky we are. Um, very grateful on a daily basis, but I still struggle with disciplining myself. And I find that people around me don't understand it. I feel them saying, get over it already. And so I indulge in that piece of cake because there might not be tomorrow. I'm 50 years old and have gone through so much more in between all that and always managed to move forward. But this time, the mindset is different. And that's what I'm hoping to tackle. In conclusion, I'd like to say that I continue to work out, but the workouts haven't been as effective. I do enjoy a beverage, but I haven't lost control completely. And although I indulge, I've managed my weight to a certain point, but all that feels like a chore and not enjoyment. I hope that my question opens up a conversation for so many people who perhaps feel the same way. Life is too short, and I just want to live it to the fullest, regardless of the circumstances and consequences. Wow, that is a lot of trauma, actually.
A lot of trauma. Yeah, that is a lot of trauma. And when I first read the question, I was brought back to when my dad died 26 years ago, and it was of a massive heart attack, and it was totally a surprise and a shock to everybody. He was only 60 years old, and it fully sent me into a space of very similar to your to the asker in terms of just like an existential crisis, really. Like my whole world had upended, and it forced me to question a lot of things. And I understand, like I really empathize and have compassion for the level of, it's almost like when the grief is so great, there's this feeling of like painful desperation, um, and urgency at the same time to just like what she sort of, or what they describe, like eating everything, throw caution to the wind. What does it all matter anyway? Because we can just be taken in a snap, right? Um, and that really is the fragility of life at any given moment. And I think that the only way for me that I came back to a sense of balance isn't quite the right word, but a sense of comfort in it was um, really to lean into my grief and to acknowledge the trauma. It sounds like they've gone through so much heartbreak and so much devastation. Um, and it does, and they don't really describe what they've done to sort of acknowledge the grief.
Mm,
So, so I would really say start there and to really go deeply into acknowledging these traumatic, heartbreaking events that happened, um, and to ask for help and guidance through it, to lean into the grief, to accept what happened, not to fight it, so that they can perhaps come back to a place of a broader understanding of what now their lives mean without their dad, with having experienced this trauma with their child, and all the things that they were describing in between or not describing in between that happened. But it really, I think, has to start with honoring that grief.
yeah, I think you're so right. Like, I'm just trying to think of when something like this has happened to me, and I won't say that it was anything this traumatic because, almost losing your child, losing your dad, living, growing up in a war-torn country,
Yeah.
these things like are so fundamentally shape the way that we see life, period. But for me, I would say I went through years of just super indulgent living.
Yeah.
Like, you name it. Like, I mean, it was just like, why not? I'll order that third piece of foie gras. Like,
Yeah.
I just went through that phase, and that was after I divorced my first husband, which was a really big um, trauma for me, because I never thought that I could survive without him. And I never imagined my life being anything but him. This was back in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the way that the marriage was too, because we were very frugal, we didn't do much. I just went into this phase of like, uh, anything can happen. So I might as well just enjoy myself. Like, all the things that you're afraid of can happen.
Yeah.
And so why not eat that third piece of foie gras?
Yeah.
And really cares about the pocketbook and things like that. But I think you're totally right. At a certain point, after I had indulged in everything that I could have possibly indulged in, for me at least, I got to a point where that no longer was satiating my grief. And I realized that I have to come back to myself in the end anyway. So it's, for this asker, it's not the cake. It's not the extra glasses of wine. It's, all of these things are just things. But true enjoyment in life happens when you can reconcile that life also means death.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I'm there, because I still live with a lot of fear. Yeah. But it's like, if we're so voraciously swallowing up life at a speed that we can't even fully, it's like eating too many peaches in summer and you get stomach aches.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't even feel that good about it. But in the end, it's like, if we just know that summer's going to end one day and that's kind of okay, then maybe we won't eat so many peaches until we get sick.
Yeah. 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 I think that's what it is. It's about, it's funny because, she's also saying none of it matters, but then it also all matters, right? Mm-hmm. It's true. None of this stuff, like, regardless of everywhere she came from, you're right. It won't satiate that grief and that heartbreak that she's gone through. So really, to be able to explore that and sit in it and allow that grief to move through them, to a place where they can just have a bit of space to be thoughtful about how they want to move forward in life, right? Whether it is, I'm going to have this donut because, life is short and I haven't had 10 today, so I'm just going to have the one this week, or, it's that dance of appreciating life for all of the greatness that it offers, while still holding the fragility of life right here,
And it is so much easier said than done. Like, I think we both know that we've had conversations all the time where we're like, okay, so this would be great, but like, yeah. So much easier said than done, because I think to myself, if I went through what this person went through, and my son, for cardiac arrest, and I had to, perform CPR on him, an hour later he gets revived. Like, I don't know, like, there is some grief that just never leaves you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's also okay.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the biggest things I think I learned after my dad died, was that it's not about all of a sudden being happy. It's not about not having that grief. It's about learning to live life while also holding grief. Like, I think that my grief still sits here, it still sits here, but also I have enough understanding and perspective to know that I still need to move forward in life. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to just try and do that to the best of my abilities. And hopefully it is for a long time to come, because I have things that I want to be here for the next X number of years, right?
Yeah, I think that's also such a key point. It's like we work out not because, well, I mean, I'm kind of a weirdo. I really like working out, but we work out or we don't eat that, fifth slice of cake or whatever it is, not because, you know, we don't want to, but we just want something else more.
Yes.
We want to be here for our child
Yeah.
more. We want to be able to move with, um, you know, without health issues more. And it really is just like, you know, small choices. You can want two things at once and just want one thing just a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Good,
that's a tough one.
good one. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I hope that they do take great care in moving forward through this, all of these hugely traumatic experiences.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So for people who have just joined, we're answering some questions from the You and I podcast that we didn't get a chance to answer in our actual episodes, because we will be putting the podcast. Oh, happy Mother's Day! Well, Ollie
Oh,
saying happy, so sweet.
thank
Uh,
you.
if, for those of you that don't know, Ollie was one of my chefs at Boku when I owned Boku, and he just did a speech at Pechakucha as well, which Caroline organizes Pechakucha, so
Cool.
it's kind of cool.
Co-host.
But yes, we're answering some of the questions that we didn't get a chance to answer in the podcast, and we're also taking questions from you. So for whoever's tuned in and has a question, any question at all, it could be a deep one or something that is, you know, I mean, I get a lot like, where do you perm your hair? That's like probably my number one random question anyway. So ask us anything you want. We're here for you, and we just wanted to create space for people to express themselves and for us to explore questions that you might have. But in the meantime, definitely we'll ask question 3.
Yes.
Oh goodness. Okay. Question 3. I left my drug. Oh, wait a second. Okay. It says, I left my drug addict and always abusive partner after 8 years, about 8 months ago. I was bold, convicted, and finally strong enough to leave. But after almost a year, I'm more wounded, battered, and stuck in my trauma than ever before. Talk therapy is just talk for my mind to get into some words and for my heart to be emotional, but my body is stuck, frozen, filled with stress, trauma, cortisol, paralyzed with PTSD, and all things in between. My question to you is, how do I thaw myself and help my body release all this stuff? And they say, my apologies for being so dark and heavy. And first of all, I just want to say, no apologies needed at all whatsoever. Nothing is too dark, nothing's too heavy. We're here for it all because we're all human. And actually, I do think that everybody goes through pretty dark and heavy things at some point or another. And the fact that we talk about it makes it more normalized, and we don't feel as much shame about it, because we shouldn't be having shame about things like that, I think. So yeah. So yeah.
I don't know. What do you want to start this one?
Sure, I can. I want to say that this is okay. So I'm not going to say that I went through an abusive relationship to this degree, and I've never really admitted this, like publicly maybe, but I do think that I experienced a pretty abusive relationship before, and it was very controlling, and mentally abusive, and like gaslighting in the very classic sense of gaslighting. Like, I know gaslighting is kind of a popular word to use. It's kind of become, lingo that we use for things that actually don't mean gaslighting. But yeah, it was a lot of gaslighting to the point where I actually questioned my own sanity. And then I've also been in another relationship that was very short, because I got out of there very quickly, but all the signs were leading towards physical abuse. But that first relationship I had lasted about 7 years, and it definitely left me with a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD about very specific things. Like, I wasn't allowed to like answer the phone. I wasn't allowed to, like, if someone rang the doorbell, I wasn't allowed to ring, like, open the door, things like that. So, just parsing through all of it afterwards, and what I would say to this person, not knowing the kind of abuse that this person went through, and I'm not saying that mine was equal to theirs, but a year is a very short time to even start to feel like you even can breathe or think clearly. Like, a year is very short in terms of the amount of trauma that this person went through. And yes, there is a difference between like talking things out and getting your mind out there and still having it all stuck in your body. And I think that for me, sort of tried to attack it on all levels, because I don't think that one thing is the golden ticket over another. But, to do talk therapy sometimes just cracks that ice just a little bit so that your body can um, just thaw just a tiny bit, and some of that healing can kind of like leak out of those cracks just a little bit, and then that healing sort of melts more ice. And so this thing, I've found that healing has been very cyclical. So it's not linear, like you just go, and then you get over it, and then you're at the end, and da da da, I'm healed. Yeah. It's very much like going in an upward spiral. Like, you're constantly like, oh, I hit that rough part again, and then you come back, and you hit that rough part again, and you come back. But each time you're sort of like, parts of yourself get revealed to you again, and you start to come alive again. So what I would say to this asker is, don't put so much pressure on yourself to heal now. But that in the darkest moments, know that healing is happening, even if you cannot see it, as long as you just want it. You don't, sometimes it doesn't even look like you're trying to heal, like you're not making any physical or mental, like you're not working at it. Sometimes healing looks like not working on it. Sometimes healing is just, I remember thinking, because I was trying to heal so hard and so fast, that I would get down on myself about not doing it like all the time, like thinking about it all the time and working on it all the time. And I remember thinking, we have to trust our bodies. If we have the intention to heal, our bodies will carry us there. And we don't know what path it might take, but one day we'll end up in this spot and go, oh, how did I get here? I like the air here. I can breathe here. God, I like feel warm now. So just to have hope, I think that it will happen. That's just, I mean, what do you think? because that's
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, and I'm sorry that you went through that. And I think that it obviously takes a huge amount of bravery for anybody to step out of a relationship that is so bad and so abusive. It's just, it's it's huge. So that already, I'm sure, is a big part of it. And I loved what you said about how healing is cyclical, because I totally would resonate with that. It's like, we think we've had this moment of expansion and release, and we have, and then we go on to the next thing, and then it kind of pokes its head back in every now and again, and then another layer is thawed out, and then we go again, and then another part. It's sometimes it's not instant, and sometimes it's a whole process of things, and it's huge that they're going to talk therapy. And I would also encourage them to explore other kinds of somatic physical release if that's something that is of interest to them. Whether it's other kind of modalities to help unstick some of the trauma that's been inflicted into their body. Because I do think that we store all these emotional things within our bodies kind of at a cellular level, that we can keep storing these traumatic events and not really know that they're there until we have something happen and it kind of shakes it out of us a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I really love exploring other forms and other modalities of therapy. That would
Yeah,
also be something I would encourage them to do.
yeah, I agree. I've personally done lots of different types of healing on top of seeing a therapist, which I think all of them have their place and all of them are very important. Not one is necessarily better than another.
Mm-hmm.
But I recently saw, thanks to you, a Reiki healer,
Mm-hmm.
and found it to be really powerful because what I'm working through now um, is you know resisting motherhood
Right.
and not feeling like, because I've only had examples of women who sacrifice their entire lives in order to just be a good mother, quote, good mother, or martyrs, in
Yeah.
our culture. And I was like, but I love me and I want me and I don't want to disappear and I don't want to live my life only for someone else. And so I was really resisting this, and I found that after that one session, because I was ready to let this go, um, the, I guess, sadness and the stickiness around that kind of just relieved a little bit. I've also personally done psychedelic therapy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done psychedelics before. That I personally would take that with a huge grain of salt. It's not for everyone. I was ready for it. But it's definitely a more like dangerous one that you really have to take with a grain of salt. And I want to
Yeah.
emphasize that because I'm not saying go do this. I'm saying I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and meditation and breathing, the
Yeah.
um, what do you call those
Like
breathing meditations?
breath work. Breath
Yes,
work.
breath
Yeah.
work. I've
Breath
done,
work is huge. Yeah. Breath work is hugely
yeah,
helpful. And yeah, and same like Reiki, acupuncture.
acupuncture.
Yeah. The psychedelic, big psychedelic treatment. Um, and even pranic healing. There's so many incredible modalities out there that can help us release our physical traumas without having to relive and articulate them verbally.
Yeah.
which I think can also be really helpful. So just showing up to something that can help us physically release it without having to relive and articulate the stories,
Mhm.
but just show up, be there in a trusted space, um, as long as they feel safe, and really want to drive home, um, just to give yourself the patience and the grace to allow yourself to get there, in due time, as the healing happens. It takes an incredible amount of courage, I think, to get better and to want to seek to get better. And it takes courage and bravery and yeah, yeah, just be graceful, give yourself grace, as you go through it.
Yeah. So for those that have just joined, I'll just summarize the question. There's someone that left their drug addict, abusive partner after 8 years, and it's just been a year, but they just haven't been feeling like talk therapy has been really helping them to unlock some of the trauma that they feel, and they ask, how do I thaw myself and help my body to release some of this trauma? um yeah, it's you're, you're right. I do think that it gets locked in our bodies, and really anything helps, like, but
Yeah,
to me also another thing that helped me through some of my traumas around abuse were friends.
yeah,
Really trusted friends that not don't impose on you what they think is best for you, but is just there to hold space for you to be exactly as you are.
yeah,
Because I remember when I was in that abusive relationship, one of the most powerful things that a friend said to me, she's still one of my closest friends today, is, I want so badly as your friend for you to be happy, but I fully believe that you have everything in you for you to be okay. I have to trust that. And she just kept on saying it over and over and
that's such a good
yeah,
one.
until I was like, oh yeah, I do have everything in me to be okay. And those were the words that resonated in my head as I was leaving this relationship. I have everything in me. And those kinds of friends that are like, I'm not going to tell you what to do,
No, yeah,
but I'm going to stand by you and support you in um, loving yourself.
yeah,
And I think that throughout my life, I've just been so lucky to have really good friends. And I think that my friends have healed me in some ways more than talk therapy, more than all the modalities. Like, my friends have been the things in my life to heal me. So
yeah,
surround yourself with good people. Yeah.
absolutely, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah. Should we move on to the last question?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Because we're nearing up on an hour.
Okay.
Um, okay. So, last question is, how do you let go of personal guilt? Oh, before I do that, remind whoever's tuned in that we are more than happy to answer any of your questions as well. So if you do have a question, put them in the comments. Uh, we also understand that it's very vulnerable to put questions in the comments, so like, don't feel like you need to. But if you do want something answered, anything at all, please do. You're welcome to. So the last question is, how do you let go of personal guilt? Guilt is an overpowering emotion that takes up way too much space in my life. The bigger problem is, all my guilt is self-imposed, and the person I feel most guilty about is me. Huh.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, right?
Hmm.
What does she mean? Or he? I don't know. I feel guilty my husband earns more than I do, or that he seemingly works harder than me. I feel guilty I'm not more advanced in my career or where I really want to be. Ironically, I feel guilty I'm not living the life I envisioned, and that in the future it will cause more pain and suffering that I want to admit. I feel guilty I put other people first, my work, social, romantic life. Yet I feel guilty when I don't spend more time with family and friends. Most of my days are spent thinking about what or how I should be doing something, even when those around me encourage me or remind me I'm doing so many great things. How do I let go of this guilt?
Guilt is like one of the worst things. It's like for me, guilt is like fear in terms of robbing us of our joy, you know? There's so many ways, in some ways, to approach this idea of guilt. And I remember really looking at guilt. I mean, it's an ongoing thing, but for sure, paying close attention to it a few years ago when I noticed how often throughout the day I would feel guilty.
Mm,
And yeah, yeah. And it was quite surprising and revealing to notice that, to actually notice how many times throughout the day I would feel guilty. Um, so for me, it was a process of looking at where actually and when I started to feel guilty, and this idea of guilt. Like, is this a story and is this part of my makeup because of something that happened a long time ago? Is guilt something that is such a big part of me because of an environment or a happenstance or an incident, and I've just hung on to that all throughout my life? Guilt is one of those things that sometimes I ask myself, like, how is this serving me? Is it like, how is this serving me? um, I think that guilt, if it's something where I made a poor choice and then I feel guilty about it because I feel badly about it, um, then I kind of want to be accountable. It's an opportunity for me to have that be a lesson, understand what it was, that why I made that, decision that was unsupportive, um, and and kind of use that as a learning point for me and how to move forward. And then there's guilt where people feel like they're so privileged and so they feel guilt because they feel bad that they're so living this great life, so again, coming back to that idea of guilt kind of robbing us of our
mhm,
joy. And so when I look at, regardless of how many different scenarios we can put around the idea of guilt, the feeling for me when I really look at guilt is what's beneath it. And what for me was beneath guilt was a feeling of unworthiness.
mhm, mm. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking because, around guilt, I mean, I have a very intimate relationship with guilt. Like, it's really the motivation for most of my decisions, actually. And I'll get into that later, but um, sometimes I think, like, is this guilt internally motivated or externally motivated?
Mm,
Is it because I've done something that violates my own ethic and moral system,
mm,
or is it something that someone else has told me
mm.
that I should feel bad
Yeah.
about?
Yes.
And if it's something that someone else has told me that I should feel bad about, I mean, it's good to, like, number one, consider it, consider the source that it's coming from, and consider the validity of whether or not that matches my own internal value system. So for example, you know, if this person feels guilty that their husband earns more than they do, where did this idea come from that that's a bad thing? Like, where did this come from that this is a bad thing? Or that they're not more advanced in their career. So where does this idea that they should be more advanced come from? And so like drawing that line back to its origin and then saying like, oh, this isn't my thought. This is actually, I heard this when I was a child and when I was 5, and now I believe it to be true. And it's causing a lot of tension in me. And I think you're right. Like a lot of this externally sourced guilt plays off of our insecurities and havoc.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is the asker is saying, like, giving all these different scenarios of feeling guilty. And I think that's where peeling back what's behind guilt, because we'll always have a million stories for so many different things, right? Like this negative self chatter that happens is just like like a stream, like a stream of consciousness that's like negative it's always there, ready to kind of take us down. But to be able to become kind of the observer of that and be able to notice, like you say, where that's coming from and set ourselves free from that. I really think as soon as we start noticing where the root of the guilt comes from, we start paying attention to what is at the core of it, and the feelings of insecurity and unworthiness of something is at the root of guilt. Then we can kind of set ourselves free from any of these stories that lock us into a place of guilt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I'm just thinking about like the places that I feel the most guilt in this moment in time. And I would say that it's mother guilt.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And we sometimes, I feel like as mothers, we wear it as a badge of honor or something, like, oh yeah, I get you, mother guilt. And it's just like, actually, no, let's not support this idea of mother guilt, you know, because it's just so unsupportive to living our authentic lives. I feel like all of these stories, right? All of these stories, whether they came from something or whether they're stories that we tell ourselves, whether they're old stories that no longer hold true to who we are today, in order to sort of free ourselves from those stories, we have to come back home to ourselves, connect to our truest, deepest self of who we are today, so that we can move from a place of authenticity, and we can move from a place that aligns with who we are. And if we are moving from a place that aligns with who we are right now, you know, the opportunities to feel quote unquote guilty or unworthy about something will slowly melt away, because we're not going to be prescribing by these negative self-talk narratives anymore. And we're just going to be coming home to self and what's true for us and moving from that place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you can also use guilt as a good tool, actually.
Yeah.
Say like, oh, well, wait a second, where are my value systems in this? So for example, with the whole mother guilt thing, it's like, okay, where does this come from? Like, where this idea that I need to be 24/7, completely emotionally, physically, mentally available and sacrificing for my child? Like, where does this come from? And is that me? Like, is that my value system? Well, it turns out It's really not.
Yeah.
And so, my value system is I want to be there, foster growth and um, joy and uh, you know like being able, like,
Yeah.
independence and boundary. And how is my child going to learn that for himself and for his future, and for his future relationships, if the only example he's ever seen is someone that continually sacrifices
Yeah.
everything for him,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, the guilt was actually such a good learning prompt to say,
Yes.
oh, that's not me. That doesn't come from me, and I'm not going to live that. And then you kind of stop feeling guilty a little bit, because you realize where you stand with something,
Exactly.
and you can decide from a place of real clarity and, you're right, authenticity. But how this also works with, I think, self-worth and self-esteem, is that the more we stand by ourselves,
Mhm.
like stand beside ourselves and stand for
Mhm.
ourselves, the more we're telling our inner selves and even our inner child, which is often where our feelings of unworthiness stem from, we're standing beside our inner child saying, no, 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 I got you.
Yes.
Here,
We're listening.
I'm listening, I'm protecting you, and I am speaking for you, and we will do what's right for us, not someone else.
Yeah.
And I think that is where some of that healing starts to happen, when you realize, oh no, like my adult self is not going to betray my child self, that my adult self is there to nurture and stand by my child self. And then all of a sudden your child self starts to feel like, I'm worthy of this.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm worthy of this adult self standing up for me
Hmm.
and protecting. And so there's this like the halves start to really like come together, I think. Um, at least that was my experience for me. Not to say that I'm like so feel so worthy all the
No.
time.
God, no,
So
no, me neither. No.
it's like, I mean, I'm constantly like, oh, I feel so unworthy. Like I have like
Yes.
imposter
Yeah.
syndrome or this or that or whatever.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yes. 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 That's the thing is, we need to, again, not to like repeat the same thing, but we really need to give ourselves grace around this stuff. We really need to just chill out. It's okay.
It's
It,
true.
it is okay.
The other thing that I've been thinking about a lot around guilt is, how does gratitude um, almost cancel out guilt in a way?
Mhm.
It's almost like the antidote to some of the guilt.
Yeah.
Um, because I remember um, like certain things, like feeling really guilty about my my privilege. Like, for example, my parents, they were not very wealthy. They worked so hard. They sacrificed everything for us. And I almost felt like guilty when I was enjoying my life, because I was raised watching people that could never enjoy themselves. And I felt bad if I enjoyed it. And then all of a sudden I was like, no, this is an opportunity that they've sacrificed for me. I need to be grateful for it and use it well.
Exactly. And that, yeah, and I think that that's it. I think that, guilt can be a tool as long as it doesn't it doesn't like overcome us,
Yeah.
as long as it doesn't become all consuming, right? Like using guilt as an opportunity to look at where we're at with something. And gratitude is a big one. Because I think that even now, today, yeah, we both came from extremely hardworking parents, first generation Canadians. For me, I'm first generation Canadian, and um, guilt of that. But just look at our whole climate around the world right now. To the guilt that people feel for living in their joy while people are dying and people are starving and all that kind of thing. But the thing is that's always existed, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like the pain and suffering of life and joy, it's always existed in life. And um, I think we're doing a disservice to ourselves if we get consumed by guilt. Um, yeah, and it just takes away our joy because both things can exist at the same time, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing around guilt too, not necessarily in answering this person's question about like how do you let go of guilt, but very personally, I did. I have been talking to you about this human design thing
Yeah.
forever. So in if people that have tuned in don't know about human design, it's basically um, like the combination of astrology and Chinese medicine and energy meridians and they basically type like spit out this entire profile on how you were created and every single person is different and every single person is a piece of this greater puzzle and is super crucial to kind of like uplifting humanity in what their own special way and anyway, so one of the things in human design is your motivation. So some people have this is the motivation for like making choices for anything and doing anything. And for example, some people have like innocence as a motivation, and some people have fear
Mhm.
as a motivation. Some people have ambition as a motivation, um, or want or desire as a motivation. I don't know if ambition's one, but mine is guilt.
Wow.
And I haven't looked into it a ton, but what I did look into is that actually it's not completely a bad thing that like everything in life, they are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
A way that something manifests positively and a way that it can manifest negatively.
Right.
Um, and the positive side to my using guilt as a motivation for making decisions is that in every decision I make for my career, I always want it to help someone else too. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is just who I am. In everything that I do, I need to know that I'm not the only one that gets helped by this. And so, I never do work really that only benefits me only. Like I can't do it. And so I just thought it's so interesting that in some ways this guilt that I do live with that has really caused a lot of like stress in my life, necessary stress, but that it also exhibits itself in this really beautiful way. And that in some ways that is the way I was meant to be. Like that's the way I was created to be. And to me, this makes a lot of sense. Um, that yeah, when I read my human design profile and it said guilt was my motivation, I was like, oh boy, yes it is. But oh wow, is it ever like down to just like I remember when I had the bakery and my team members would come over for like a team meeting and some of them would say, oh, that mixer, I've been looking at that one and just haven't like pressed the button and just kind of expensive, I didn't want to buy it. And I'd be like, go ahead, just take it. Yeah, because I feel so
Yeah.
guilty if I have something that someone else doesn't.
Right.
And
Oh my God.
I know, and I still kind of do that if someone's like, hey, I like that, I'm like, oh yeah, if I'm not super attached to it, I'll be
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah, have it, go for it. And in some ways this is just like this beauty of
yeah.
guilt,
Right.
but also it can quickly turn into it's like everything.
Yeah.
One depends on the other. The beauty and the dark kind of go hand in hand. But anyway, do you have any last thoughts before I wrap up?
Hmm. Just, I think I think that congratulations on 1 year of putting something out into the world. I think it is really brave, and I think that you're doing such a great job on, not that you need my like approval. I'm just saying, as your friend, it's really awesome to walk alongside you and witness your continuous evolution and your journey on this. And I am really grateful that you allow me to be part of it with you. And I think it's really brave for the people who've, written in with all their questions. And, everybody is just going through so much at any given time. And I really just think we need to have more compassion and more kindness, and really just remember that everybody is going through stuff. We just often don't know, and to reserve judgment around that, and to really allow ourselves the space and the grace to move through whatever we need to move through.
Yeah, I mean, this 1 year anniversary is also going to be sort of the last episode for a while because I'm making time to write my next book, To You Who Wonders. And it's, sorry, I'm like strangely emotional. I'm also very jet lagged, so that might be a part of it. But I just feel like this year of answering people's questions and just such a privilege to hold such private, intimate feelings. It's just been, it's genuinely changed me. Like when I started this process, I was feeling a little bit lost and feeling like I didn't know what to do with myself and where I stood and where to put my energy. And through answering these questions, like there were so many moments where I felt like I was writing to them, but I was like, if I can say this to this person, why can't I
Yeah.
say that to me too?
Oh my gosh. Yes. All the
Yeah.
time. It's Yeah, all the time. Whenever I'm in conversation with somebody and have deep compassion for them, I literally am like, okay, it's not lost on me that I need to be saying this to myself too.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah. Yes.
yeah.
Like all those, I would write to someone and say like, you are just fine the way you are.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
you know, just be gentle and kind to yourself. And there were moments where I was not gentle and not kind to myself. And I would actually stop because I said it so much to people that it actually stopped me. And I said, be gentle and kind to yourself, because it had become this, new pathway that had been created in my brain from saying this so many times to others. And I genuinely believe that doing the podcast over the year has made me more loving towards myself, more accepting. There's more self-worth. And there's also this hope that through knowing other people's stories and how they struggle, that we decrease the amount of shame that people
Yes.
feel, but
Yeah.
also that we increase the amount of empathy and compassion, because you just do not know who is just going through a shit time in life. And
Hmm.
we can always extend um, a little bit of grace
Yeah.
to our neighbor, I think. Me included. I mean, I can be very impatient and whatever,
Same.
but such a reminder. Anyway, so this is the last episode for a while, so I'm very, very grateful we got to do this as a last episode. I do have one thing to sort of say before we end off. Um, in addition to a thank you to you
Thank
so
you to you. Thank
much,
you.
all your wisdom, and to all the people who have tuned in. This episode we'll figure out some way to put it up online somewhere so people can see it. But I also want to highlight a not-for-profit organization chosen by one of our past guests. we do this in each episode. It's just a small way to thank our community and to thank our guests. And Kim Budziak, she was a past guest, and she wanted to support the Indian Residential School Survivor Society. And they've given us a little bit of information, so I'll read it. The Indian Residential School Survivor Society is a not-for-profit organization that's been supporting First Nations peoples in British Columbia since 1994 by providing essential services to residential school survivors, families, and communities experiencing intergenerational trauma. The IRSSS assists First Nations peoples to recognize and be holistically empowered from the primary and generational effect of the residential schools by supporting research, education, awareness, partnerships, and advocating for justice and healing. So if you want to learn more, you can head to irsss.ca. And you can also head to youandipodcast.com, because we'll be putting up a video that IRSSS has provided, just because we were planning on putting it at the end of this live stream, but because we couldn't live stream to YouTube, we couldn't do that. So we'll put it up on our website. And I guess last words are just, we hope that you have taken some inspiration, some healing from this interview. And we just send you, I think I can speak on your behalf, Caroline, send you all so much love and so much support and so much gratitude. And that's it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, signing off now. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Every walk within our journey of life is ceremony. For us as First Nations people, ceremony is not separated. The Indian Residential School Survivor Society is a unique organization that provides safe spaces for land-based healing, emotionally, spiritually, and culturally for those that attended Indian Residential School, those that we call intergenerational survivors, 60 Scoop survivors, Indian Day Scholar, missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, missing and murdered Indigenous boys and men, and community members that are just peeling back the layers of trauma. That's what we do.
Hey.
I had custody of my two older grandsons because my oldest daughter is not in a good place. She's out on the streets. And then I got my youngest granddaughter, she's 7 months old now, and her mom was murdered.
So I'm the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's and Girls and Two-Spirited Coordinator for the North. I cover Prince George to basically the ocean. For the majority of the time, I'm actually on the road. And we do this because a lot of our First Nations people have barriers. Some of them don't have vehicles, some of them don't have licenses. So we try to minimize those barriers for them. So that's us going into communities.
Our team is in the Nass Valley, it's in Haida Gwaii, it's in Burns Lake, it's in Hazelton, it's here in Prince George, we have some in Fort St. John. So when we have our people in those locations, the ability to respond to a crisis is a lot faster.
We try to keep everything land-based, bringing our people back to their culture. With residential school, we've kind of lost that piece, and a lot of people have lost their culture. So what we do is we try and bring that piece back to the families so that they can begin their own healing journey within their culture.
All of our services are at no cost to any of our clients. We believe this journey is strictly their individual journey, and we are there just to be the strength they need us to be in that moment.
Jolene is very personable. She's very, her demeanor is like she's a friend. She gets me.
As First Nations people, the land is where our knowledge comes from. That is where our connection to our Creator exists. And through the work at the Indian Residential School Survivor Society, culture saves lives.
Healing can take forever. You can do it your whole life and still not be healed. So it's a lifelong journey, and those little pieces where I get to see a moment of brightness in someone, that's why I do what I do.
IRSSS is ultimately grateful for all donors and thankful for those that have provided financial support to IRSSS. Every dollar and cent that is provided goes a long way and allows us to reach people that we haven't been able to reach before. For anyone that is interested in more information about who we are, please visit irsss.ca. For anyone that is wanting to donate, please go to our website.